speaking of animals, my dog Beckett is turning 14 tomorrow with me. So we
Wow.
actually have the same birthday. And I'm not making that up. It's not like he was adopted where we're just like, oh, I'll write it in. No, his birth certificate says, the paperwork from AKC says that he was born on April 15th. And he's been there with me throughout my entire, really adult life.
All right. Hey, everyone. This is Paige on the Gecko Cove Connection, and today I am guest hosting, and I'm actually interviewing Bobby. So, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a fun new kind of experience. Thank you for agreeing to being the guest host today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've certainly not done anything like this before, so we're gonna have some fun. But I hear your birthday is coming
Me
up. When
neither.
is the actual day?
So, as of this recording, it's tomorrow. So, I am a tax baby, April 15th, everybody. That'll be on a Monday this year. And yeah, so I'm getting old. I won't say how old I'm getting, but it's getting to the point where I don't want to celebrate my birthday. That's how old I am.
Well, happy early birthday, anyways.
Thank you. Yeah, no,
Um,
it's still fun.
yeah. Do you have any fun plans?
I actually celebrated yesterday, so I took my kids out to a restaurant. It was a fun Mexican restaurant, lots of colors. Someone recommended it. And then we went to, actually, I work at a high school, so we actually went to the school musical and saw Seussical the musical, and the kids did a great job. So we got second row seats. I felt like a big shot, even though it only cost me $6 because I've got my employee discount. Uh, and so that went really well. Especially my son Georgie, he was singing the songs and having an absolute blast.
Oh my gosh, that sounds fun.
It is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you have a history with animals. I know you've said before that your family has a history with dog breeding. I know you've been into fish before. What led you to reptiles, and then how did you land on gargoyle geckos specifically?
Yeah, great question. So reptiles specifically, I remember I actually was studying abroad. I was a junior in college, and I actually had a fish tank. It was one of my very first like my own fish tank kind of situations. And I made my dad watch it while I was abroad for 6 months. And I got back and I was such a brat. I'm like, I don't want the fish anymore. I want to get a leopard gecko because I saw one of those, and YouTube was a newer thing back then. And I saw somebody having one on their shoulder, like a little mini dragon. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I knew I wasn't going to take care of multiple pets at that time. I didn't have very much income. And so I sold off the fish at a loss. And, I was still living with my parents at the time during the summers. I went and picked up a leopard gecko, and it was a great first pet. I actually ended up getting a rainwater albino, so
All
I didn't even
right.
know what that was. I just thought it was a pretty gecko, and I had
What
that
did it
throughout
look like?
college. I'll actually post a picture of what a rainbow albino looks like right there. It's kind of hard to explain. They're kind of pastelly, so
Okay.
yellows, pinks, purples. Really beautiful gecko. Ended up being female. Called her Luna. Very stereotypical name for a gecko, and she was a great pet. She definitely was a conversation starter in college.
Absolutely. Aw. And did you ever breed leopard geckos, or did you keep them together? Did you have them separate?
No, I just, you know what? I never bred. I never thought about breeding. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
pet.
Yeah.
I just wanted something cool to have, a display. I worked with, I love tinkering with the different enclosures. I thought I was really, innovative. I thought I'm like, you know what? Let's put tile in the tank. Um, and so
Very cool.
right. I was like, you know what? I think this could be some sort of job. I could actually like package this and sell this. And after looking into it, I'm like, yeah, no, this it's either already going to be been done or someone would have done it if it would have made sense. But tile's so cheap that you could just go do it yourself. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, never dreamt of breeding really until I got into gargoyle geckos. So I went from that to fast forward to grad school. Ended up rehoming the gargoyle gecko to a teacher, and that'll come full circle later on. I so rehomed the leopard gecko. Ended up working with a lot of dogs, doing dog training and working at one of the big box stores, being a dog trainer. And reptiles to me, I grew up, they were never a big part of my life. Snakes were scary noodles, that kind of stuff. So working and actually having to open up the enclosures for people and show them what a snake looked like or a bearded dragon looked like. At first, I was really timid, and then I realized they weren't going to bite me, and they were really cool. And especially the bearded dragons, I remember, not the really small babies, but the medium-sized babies at those stores. There was one that was just super chill, and I would wear it around. And even I'd walk around the store while also trying to sell pet classes, right? Dog training classes with my dog Beckett.
Sure.
And yeah, it was really cool. So people were like, "Oh, is that real?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, that's real." They do that all the time, so I got to sell a few of those that way. But I was like, you know what, I want one, and I remember having a debate with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, and she's like, "No, not going to do it. I'm not a reptile person. You are not forcing this. This is not. Nope, we're moving in together. That's not going to happen. Never, 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 never." And I'm a very persistent person. I'm a very annoying person when I want something, and my wife will admit that too. And so I wore her down, and I got what I wanted, and I ended up getting a really cool red base or red kind of morph. It was a dunner. It had everything in it, like everything you could possibly imagine. I went like top of the line. Uh, Bearded Dragon, and I
Okay.
had a lot of fun with it. It was great. So that was my
Yeah.
first experience with those. But again, it was just a pet. I built its
Yeah.
enclosure. I watched YouTube videos. It wasn't until I got to uh, the pandemic, and I was sitting around. I had just actually used the Bearded Dragon in my classroom now that I'm a counselor, and it was my
Mm-hmm.
therapy dragon.
Oh,
And
that's
so the
perfect.
kids, oh, it was great because the thing was super chill. It was interesting. The kids loved watching it feed, and it introduced a whole new generation of students and kids to reptiles, where a lot of them were,
Sure.
even if they were afraid, they'd have a friend. Oh, don't worry about it. They'd take pictures with it on their head. And I don't keep candy like a lot of counselors and teachers in their room,
No,
so
you have
I always
something
joke.
better.
Exactly, and so I went and I was always looking around. There was a great pet store near me. Actually, it's a place down in Chicago. It's called Curious Creatures. I actually had
Hmm.
them on one of my previous podcasts, Allison and Andy, and they, I'd go there just to kind of look around all the time, and I would buy feeders there, so it was always an excuse to go. Um, and so when I was there, they always had gargoyle geckos. They had crested geckos. I actually liked crested geckos the way they looked better, at least at their store, because they
Every
didn't have
time
the
I
super
post
bright
one of my
ones.
crested geckos, like my family are like, "Wow, what's that? That's so cool!" And I'm like, "It is cool, but like, I also love my Gargs, the originals."
Yep. Yeah, it's one of those things. They're gorgeous animals, and I
Yeah.
almost got into them. I'll get to that in a minute, but
Right. There's a reason they're so popular.
there's a reason they're popular. I just always wanted to go. I like to be a little bit different, right? And then
Mm.
all of a sudden you see especially the red blotches, and I saw one of those online, and I was just like, "Do you have any of those?" They're like, "No, we don't." Not at the time they didn't.
Yeah.
So I sourced it other places, but that store really was my introduction. To just seeing what a gargoyle gecko was. But okay, how did I get into gargoyle geckos? All right, long story, you know. So we're sitting there around the pandemic. I've got a extra tank because I actually the bearded dragon. He was great. Had him for a long time. I was just kind of getting bored with it, as people do with pets. It's not the best thing. You should keep your animals as long as possible. I want to keep them, now, especially how invested I am. But I did the thing where I rehomed it just because I wanted to make sure he was getting the most attention possible. I was also going to be a new dad at the time, and
Okay.
so
Big life
life
change.
was changing, that kind of stuff. But then after my son was born and the pandemic hit, I'm like, I want to get back into it, but I don't know if I want to deal with another bearded dragon, right? I know
Mhm.
myself. I like change. I like, adding things, and bearded dragons take up a huge amount of space. I wasn't
Right.
looking at breeding anything, but I had an extra tank, a really large Exoterra. And so I ended up searching some, Facebook forums and everything, and there's this gargoyle gecko, a little baby, and I said, "Hey, would you ever want to trade?" Right? Because I knew I could buy an enclosure for it, and I did. Actually, I got the enclosure, the gecko, everything, just as a trade with a Exoterra. So that's how I started, and the addiction went from there. I could go on for a long time with the story of how I started to acquire more and more, but that was the very first one. Got the addiction, and then my first one that I kept, because that one wasn't that impressive,
Right.
um, was actually Hawaii from Birds and Bees Pet Shop. I saw it, he posted on Facebook. I had some extra money at the time, and I ran over that day. He's like, "Wow, you got here fast." I'm like, "I had it off."
You
It
needed
was a
it.
six
You
stripe.
saw it. You had to
Oh,
have it.
I was, again, I wasn't even looking at breeding at the time. I just wanted a really cool gecko. And then after a few, and you see people who are breeding, I'm like, all right, I'll try it out. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how many are you up to now? How many like adults, breeders, and then I know you've produced a number of babies. What's your current number at?
All right. So doing some math right now. I've got two girls that are just starting to lay. I've got about six females and
Okay.
three males. Two that I own, one that's here on a loan from Southern Girl Exotics, Delirium. He's insane. I can't wait to see what he's going to produce. But I've only got him paired up to the one girl. So she's a new breeder, hasn't laid anything yet. But my other ones are laying eggs like crazy. I've got four babies out this year already, and I've
Wow.
got, yeah, I was impressed with that. And they started early. Four
Yeah.
babies out already this year, and I've got 12 eggs in the incubator already.
Oh, wow. You are.
Um,
So that's from how many females?
so that's only from four now producing. The
Okay.
other, I've got six females that are trying to be bred this year, but
Yeah.
my girl Hawaii, man, she produces like
Like,
clockwork. I mean, she gave
yeah.
me, so many eggs last year, so she started up again real early this year.
That's exciting. Yeah, I know last year you had a little bit, you first, a lot of first year breeders, they have a slow
Hmm.
start, but it sounds like they have taken off this year. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I even Eve, she only produced, I think, two eggs last year in total.
Okay.
You have one of the babies right now,
Hmm.
and so I got one egg from her right away this year. That one hatched out, and it is a stunner, absolute stunner. And then I've got another set of two eggs right now in the incubator. So I've got her
Oh,
paired up with Raffles this year, so a different pairing. He's a red base.
yeah.
Happy to see, when Philip Tremper tells you to pair two geckos, you do it, Uh,
Absolutely, yeah. And the red base with red base, you'll be on top of the red base game because Eve has like
hopefully.
one of the most incredible red bases out there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she was another surprise. I didn't know what I was. Another Birds and Bees pickup. Dan at Birds and Bees produced her, has the parents still. He calls it his forever group. And he looked at me that day. I remember I'd never spent more than, I think, $400 on a gecko at the time. And that to me was a huge amount of money on any reptile. And I
Absolutely, yeah.
saw her for only 450. Okay. And I'm like, "Hey, Dan, can you knock off $50 and we'll call it even?" He goes, "Hell no. No, trust me. You want this gecko." He goes, "I'm going to regret this." you know, we've talked about it since. He's like, "Oh man, I should have charged you more." So, but you
Yeah.
don't know. That's why buying geckos young can really be beneficial.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and she's gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love her. I'm glad that, earlier this year, I was looking at selling her.
Thought
I
you were
had my
crazy.
eye on a male. I am crazy. I was crazy. But you see something you like and you try to figure out what's the best way to get it, and you're always playing. Okay, if I pair her to him and him to her, and you're working different combinations.
Hmm.
And for a hot second, I'm like, do I really need her? I have this new baby. I've got eggs. let's just see. Especially if I can get, I post her. People know now I post her for $5,000, so that's not a small amount of money.
No.
Um, so would it have been worth it? I'm glad she just didn't sell. I'll put it that way. So I'm
Yeah, it
excited to
all works
continue to
out.
breed her.
She stayed for a reason.
She did. Yep. Everything. We've got a plan out there somehow.
Yeah. I know you've mentioned before that you want to keep your collection pretty small. What do you think
hmm
is the top, like, where do you eventually want to be? How many breeders? What size do you want to keep your collection at?
So the goal right now, and I will guarantee you I'll eat these words later on when you replay this. Um, 10 pairs. Right now
Okay.
I'm in the mindset that I want to do pairs. If I have to do a trio, just because of what I have currently, I'm not going to keep them in a trio, but rotate the male is my kind of thought process now.
Sure.
But
I
interviewing
think that
enough
works
people,
best.
yeah, I really want to just keep pairs together. My ultimate plan is to buy new enclosures, new PVC enclosures, and kind of just deck them out. Basically a 2 by 2 by 2 cube for everybody, and just have them live in there year round if everything works out. But also have backup locations in case I need to separate the males. But that's my ultimate goal is to have 10 males, 10 females, and just keep getting the best I possibly can while also just keeping my absolute favorites long term.
Right. That'd be awesome. That's a nice big cage. I had groups in a 2 by 2 for a little while, and it's really fun to see them use all that space.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but I separated the groups. I'm keeping them in pairs now as well. And
Yeah.
I think they do a lot better just one male, one female than the girls go after each other. I don't know. It
And
wasn't.
that's where I see the most aggression. Even when I've had my girls together, is just I don't know. Girls are nasty to each other, both in high school and in geckos. So
Not all of them.
not all of them. No, 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 no. There's some sweethearts out there, but you get a mean queen bee, she'll
Yeah.
take some tails for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine seem a lot happier just in those pairs, but that sounds really cool. So would you do like your own DIY background? How would you deck them out?
Great.
Ideally.
Yeah. Ideally, yes. Again, I need to save up some money to do it the right way. But I think what I'd like to do, DIY backgrounds are great. I've done the DIY a ton. I think long term, if I'm only gonna have 10 pairs, I always love the universal rock backgrounds,
They're
and
so cool.
so
Yeah.
oh, they're amazing. And I'm never gonna produce something like that that's gonna last long term. And I would love to, get some really nice enclosures, silicone those to the back, and then just deck them out with, I'm not going to go fully bioactive, especially if it's a breeding setup. I just don't think that that's,
In a 2 by 2, that's a lot of space to dig.
yeah, it is. It's a lot. Even in the 1818s I have back here for a lot of my geckos right now, I mount up the substrate. I only have to dig in one corner the way I have it, but I couldn't keep a full bioactive doing that. And that's what I would do in the 2 by 2 with my current plan. What I would do is try to, put in as much cork bark, still give them some places to go, places to climb, interact, some beautiful fake plants. Maybe I'll dabble in some real plants. I think it would be kind of fun to see, but I worry that if I put like a pot in there, right, which I know some people do, they're just going to dig in the pot and lay eggs there, and then I'm going to lose some eggs. So it's all a balance. Everything has pros and cons. There's no one perfect way of doing it. Is what I've figured out, and so just trial and error. And my plan, the best plan I have today, will go out the window next year, and I'll have another best plan. But you're always looking to
Exactly.
improve and help out.
That's half the fun of the hobby is tinkering with things and figuring out what works best for you, what works best for the geckos. It's so much fun. my
It,
my
it,
care
it
changes
is.
every year too.
Yeah, and that's the fun part about even doing this podcast is everybody I interview, it's a little bit different. And like you said, you
Hmm.
even just as an individual, you change year to year, right? And
Yep.
so that's what I like about this versus just keeping one gecko or one species. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but I always found the most fun I have is setting up, right?
Hmm.
Doing the research, buying the animal, just going down those different rabbit holes of what else can I do to tinker with this. And once I'm done, like with the bearded dragon that I had, I put it together. What else do you do? Right? Yeah, I bought the one animal, and obviously there's interacting and taking care of it, but you get it dialed down, and it's like, okay, I'm feeding the roaches again, and I'm gut loading them, and then I'm cleaning poop for the 100th million time. So
Right.
people lose, at least people like me, they can lose interest, right? And so
Hmm.
that's what I love about this hobby is that there's always something new, there's always something exciting, and you've got morphs coming out and different things. So, like I said, I like the idea of keeping to 10, but I'm human.
I know. I've come up with a number in my mind as well, and I'm like, yeah, but then maybe, maybe I'll go get a few more here, there, and it's
Yep.
hard. And it's hard to, for me, it's hard to let go of my like old breeders. I still have some from, when I started 10 years ago, and it's like I can't ever give them up.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's they become your little babies, and they all have different personalities, which is one thing I love about the gargoyle geckos. And I know other new cow species have their own personalities. The chewies, I've heard that a ton, but gargoyles are not just dumb creatures that just all act the same.
No.
I love. I think it's Gargoyle Queen has the handleability scale, right? And
Yeah.
it's so true. I've got some that are just spazzes sometimes, and it depends on the
Right.
time of day. I wake them up in the middle
Mhm.
of the day, they're all pretty chill. They're still groggy,
Yeah.
you know?
I don't feed
But
at night for that reason, because then you have jumping, geckos everywhere.
you do. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you're chasing them, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, they
um,
run over, like run under something, and you're like, no.
there goes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so, but I've got some that are just, I could plop them on anybody's hand. I could plop them on your head, and they're just going to chill there. You just hope to God they don't poop on your head.
Right.
That's the worst thing that's going to happen. Um,
You don't
but
have
they're
long hair,
just the
but with
best.
my long hair, I've gotten them like stuck in my hair. They like bury themselves in there, and it's like,
I, I believe that, especially with their claws, like when
yeah.
they're super active, they're not going to tear you up like a monitor or other species.
Mm-mm.
But do you ever get like those little tiny little scratches when they just
That
run up
start
your arm
to
and they're
itch like
really,
crazy. Yeah.
yes, yes. I'm
Yeah.
like, I hope to God I'm not turning out to be allergic to them. So,
I know. No, yeah, like pretty bad for me now. So, sometimes I wear gloves when I'm just like doing regular maintenance just to kind of like protect myself a little bit. But some are worse than others. Like some I
mhm.
can handle no problem. They don't scratch, but others leave, yeah, those little marks all over your hand and your forearm, and then they get really red and itchy.
They do. Yeah. And I think it's the ones that are just trying to get away, right? Because that's why they like that cork bark. When they're really trying to move fast, they
Yeah.
dig in.
Yeah.
It's like a cat jumping off of a perch. They, even if they're not looking to scratch, they just use those nails. That's what they're there for.
All right. Well, do you have what pairings are you most excited for this year? Current projects that you have the most hope for?
Sure. Actually, I'll do this. I'll share my website real quick to go over that. I think a visual might help.
Okay.
So let me do that
Very
real
cool.
fast. All right. Can you see it?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So on here, this is my website if anybody hasn't seen it. Also, I got to give you a shout out. I was looking at your website. Well, I do all the time, but I noticed on there you've got your episode with me on there.
Yeah.
So nicely done. I was
Thanks.
rewatching it, going, man, that is so cool. It feels like it was just yesterday, but it was a while ago that we recorded that.
Yeah.
So very fun. Well, okay, so here are my breeding groups for this year. So I've had them posted. My main guy that I'm trying to kind of see what he can produce because he only got 2 eggs last year is I always butcher his name. It's French. It's the island I had my honeymoon in. So just Pralin, Pralin, Proslin. If you say any of them,
Something along
I'll know
those
who you
lines.
mean.
Yeah. I could
Right.
ask my husband. He knows French.
Does he know French? Awesome. So go to the Seychelles. He'll be able to talk to the locals. So they all speak
Yeah.
French there. But I've got him paired to 3 girls. He's in pretty much all the time with Hawaii, the girl I was telling you
Okay.
about, my first gecko. She
Yep.
is it's fun. She got really orange for a while, but now that she's breeding, she's gotten yellow, which I've never seen before. Um,
She's really cool looking. She's very unique.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you can see the orange more here, and
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, in her current photo, she's more yellow. Um, you know, I joked around on Instagram the other day that if I renamed them and didn't have a theme, they'd be ketchup and mustard. So,
That'd be
um,
perfect.
yeah. And then I've actually got two blotches. I don't have a blotch male that's ready to breed right now, unfortunately. That both of them will be ready next year. But I've got a new girl, Aruba, who I picked up at Tinley. She I picked up. She's from 4-2 Exotics, but I actually got her from Chris French, who bought her as a young gecko. And actually, if you look at the parents, they are wild caught geckos from Frake Fast. So from the Yate region, I thought that getting an F1 would be totally worth it. And so I'm excited to see, and especially the coloration. It doesn't look like much at first, but for an F1 gecko to have this much red and this much coloration, I'm really excited.
I agree. Yeah, she's gorgeous.
Thank you.
She doesn't look
Yeah.
like she came from two wild caught parents. And
No,
that's really,
I don't even
do
know
you
which two it
know
is.
do you know how old the parents are or
I
how
don't.
long
That's a
that they've
great
had them?
question.
Yeah.
I know that Frank Fast has had them since the late '90s. They were collected in the Yate region again,
Mhm.
but the specifics on it, I'd be making it up, and I don't want to do that. Um, but I have seen some siblings. There was a gecko at Tinley that's a full sibling of hers, which I believe it's a full sibling again. That he's got them in a group of four. That's striped and just massive, like absolutely massive, this boy. And it just
Very
shows you
cool.
the genetic potential with wild caught genetics. I
The
think as we
parents
breed
look
them, they're getting
to be
smaller
a
and
pretty good
smaller,
size.
more colorful, obviously. But to truly see
Oh,
the structure
think you're
and
cutting out on
the
me.
size of some of these geckos, it's impressive. And I just really want to work something like that into my line because I am working with higher color animals. So that's my rationale with her. And then I've got him paired to one last girl. Speaking of size, let's go back here. Is Bimini here? Bimini was my first big blotch purchase from Firehouse Geckos. Darren got me hooked on these, and he just produces amazing geckos. Had him on the podcast as well, so go check out that episode. But Bimini, she blew up in size. And he gave me a great deal on her as a kid. But she's the one that when I say I have a really chill gecko that'll just let me do whatever, and she never gapes at me, and she's great with kids. That's what I picked her up as. So I saw that on Morph Market, and I'm like, I
Wow,
have to
she
have
turned
that.
out beautifully. Yeah.
Didn't she? Thank
Wow,
you.
she progressed really nicely.
Yeah, and if you like her, wait till her sister gets ready. So I'll show you that in a little bit. But
Okay. And she looks really orange in these pictures. Is she orange in person or is she more red?
so she's a true bicolor. So these are some older photos, to be honest with you. The
Hmm.
one that I have here is more accurate. So she's starting to develop a yellow base. I think the camera picked up a little more yellow than she truly is, to be completely honest. But it's almost like a kind of a drawn fire, if you know what I mean, where when you don't actually have one color and you're trying to draw a fire where it's red in the middle and then orange and then yellow on the outside. That's
Yeah,
what she looks like. It's
very
rings
cool.
of color, whereas the closer you get to the center of her blotches, the more red she is, which is I really like that look.
I'm excited for that pairing. I think out of the three, that's my favorite because they both have
Uh,
great color, great coverage, and I like seeing what you get with Blatch and a Stripe. That's
mhm.
exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm just kind of throwing things at the wall right now because I don't have the perfect pairings or perfect pairings. And if something sticks, maybe I'll just repeat it. I do. What's kind of fun about her is so she laid her very first set of eggs. She just hit the 2 year mark a little bit ago, and I've been waiting a long time because she was 60 grams at a year old. She's now almost pushing 70 grams. Okay,
Okay.
so to even my males that'll be ready for her next year, I'm like, are you gonna be big enough to handle her? Like she's nice. So at least she's
Yeah.
well, I don't know how nice she is to geckos, but she's nice to me. Um, so yeah, I'm interested. But one thing I noticed, and I wanted to maybe ask you this real quick, if you don't mind. Her eggs came out different than almost anybody else's eggs that
Okay.
I've ever seen. I don't think it's probably a calcium thing, but I really don't know. They were not shiny white. Like they looked like they were all scratched up,
Kind of like a
and kind
yellowish
of
shade.
Yeah, a little bit.
Were they
And so
extra soft or did they feel about the same?
so they were a little bit softer, but not squishy, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So I'm watching them. I hope they are fertile. They both have the little Cheerio. They're a good size, but I think maybe I definitely gave her a calcium lick after that, and I've been putting a little liquid calcium in her
Was she
diet
laying
just to.
duds before or was that like her first
Nope,
ever
this is her
clutch?
first ever clutch. Yeah.
It could
Um,
it could be just yeah that it's the first clutch. But I have some females that it seems like one egg will be normal and one's like a little bit softer or yeah, like a little not as well calcified for whatever reason. And they're fed the same diets. And it's always like one out of the two. So I don't know if it's like a wacky ovary or what's going on.
yeah,
But they hatch, so
I'll
hopefully
take
your
it.
eggs
Yep.
do the same.
I'm hoping, especially yeah, with those two. So, yeah, I've got those two paired up, and then my other uh, breeders that I got going on right now. So I've got Raffles. He's just really done a great job. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who just gets the job done every single time. And so I got him paired up with Eve this year, both red bases. Again, I've already had one of their babies pop out. Phenomenal. I've already got someone who's interested in and put a deposit down on it, which I probably shouldn't,
That's awesome.
take deposits this young, but it's one of those things I'm trying to buy a male, and so
Right.
I'll do it for right now.
You're trying to fund something, so you're wheeling and dealing, making
Exactly.
good deals.
And I'll show you what that is so it makes more sense so people don't think I'm nuts. But and then Kalik here, Kalik I also got from Birds and Beasts Pet Shop. She's a gorgeous, like really, really white base, and she's produced some amazing stuff with raffles in the past. So those two are pretty consistent. But I'm not super excited about those two because I've seen what they've produced. They've had a lot of babies, and they're great. They're fantastic geckos. They just they're not
New
like,
pairings are
oh my
exciting
god, they're
because
gonna
you
be
never know what you're gonna get.
yeah. And then I'm really excited about this. They've bred, they're together, they're doing well. She's plump, but just no digging behavior yet, no eggs yet. But I've got Delirium from Southern Girl Exotics, and then my girl Gaia. Again, I think the yellow. I got to change this picture because I think the yellow just for some reason I was using my DSLR. Everything came out
Yeah.
just a hair more yellow than normal. So
Sure.
this is more of kind of what she looks like.
Okay.
And yeah,
Yeah,
she's
she's
got
a
a
pretty
real
girl
nice
too.
dorsal. Yeah, not my prettiest, but definitely I would say B out of a
Yeah.
scale of A B C D. But yeah, we'll see. She's got some great lineage where she came from. Her parents. What's funny is so she's from H2O Reptiles, and I've got a lot of great geckos from him. But every time he takes a picture, they all look orange, and then I'll get there in person, and I'm like, dude, they're super red. Like I don't know what Samsung phone he's using, but he never does himself any justice, which is okay with me because I'm always happy when I see the actual gecko in person. Like my expectations are like a 7, and then I get a 9, and so I'm like,
Yeah,
I'd rather that than have expectations of a 9 and get a 7. So
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, they
so
look like they'll
that's.
be a nice pair too. Um, so this is your second year breeding. Where do you see
Mhm.
yourself in like 5 years from now?
Oh, 5 years from now, I am on a beach, retired with gecko money. Now I,
If only.
right. Um, honestly, I think that there's a few females that we'll see what they produce. That I might want to continue to upgrade.
Hmm.
I'm always drooling over. I saw the geckos that you've posted. I've talked to you about a few of them, and I've seen. Brian Koala geckos right now is just it's not fair that he has so many I would call almost omega level geckos. Okay,
Yeah,
I
that
mean they got
male,
omega level prices, but
that male is consistent.
yes, yeah, and I mean the other one he just got from Ariel is just insane.
Yeah.
But the guy's stacked with geckos, for sure. But I just see myself rotating in a few out here and there. Again,
Hmm.
there's a few that hopefully will stay with me forever, and they'll just have a cushy life eating Pangea and some insects. But I just want to continue with the hobby. I want to really meet some more people. I want to go and travel a little bit more for expos. I would love to go to Flora Fauna. I would love to
Mm-hmm.
work with David on his Gold Standard Gecko Club and enter some geckos into that. Um, and just continue to do what I'm doing right now. Meet new people, interview new people. Hopefully the podcast will still be running. I don't know if it'll still be running in 5 years. We'll see. But I'm enjoying it so far, and as long as I'm having fun, I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, good for you. The podcast has been awesome. I feel like you've really brought the Garg community together. I've watched
Well, thank
almost
you.
all of them. There's a few I need to catch up on, but it's really fun, like hearing, like you said, everyone does something different. Like I learned something in every single episode. It's a really cool project.
Thank you. Yeah, what's hard for me, honestly, I love interviewing everybody, and I've mentioned this in a few other podcasts, but the hardest part for me is hearing so on a weekly basis someone who's completely doing things different than another person. And I
Yeah.
have to kind of look at, okay, well, how am I set up? What are my goals? Can I utilize it? Can I not utilize it? But I see everybody I bring on as more of an expert than me, right?
Yeah.
I am not the expert, right? I am not writing the book on gargoyle geckos, and that's why, sometimes even with I've gotten people who are like, "Can you put out more content on a care guide or on this or that about the geckos?" And I know what I'm doing at this point,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily. There's so many other great people who have put out content. I'll get to that point, I will, but not right now. That's why I still want to just keep learning.
Yeah, and it's so hard because things that I said 2 or 3 years ago, now it's like, actually, I'm going to tweak that a little bit. And I kind of disagree with what I've said now that I have more experience. And even like, at the time, maybe I had 7 years of experience, but in the 3 years since then, I have a different viewpoint on it, or I do things differently. And it's always changing, like we talked about. It's fun,
Yeah,
but it's hard because then, I've some of the advice I've given before, I'm like, can I retract that? And here's what I'm doing now,
but
and
if
it's
it's
working
online,
better
it's
for
there
me.
forever,
Yeah.
unless you take down the video. And that's why also, I've watched other people's content, right? I binge everybody's, and so
Hmm.
I binge more than I make. But with that, there's some tutorials for gargoyles. I'm just like, no, no, no,
Nope. Yeah.
no, you know. But I take it with a grain of salt. I don't judge anybody because again, they thought that was the right way of doing it. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong. It's just not the way I want to do it, or I think it's
Right.
right now.
Right.
So, and also, I mean, even week to week, I'll get a great idea from somebody, and it'll be completely different than the next week. And for example, I've had multiple guests, both people. I won't say who. You can go watch the episodes to figure out who I'm talking about here. But let's talk about feeding pinkies, right?
Okay.
And rodents. Kind of not something anybody talks about, right? And I, just knowing other species, I'm like, wait, you know what? A pinky, it's the right size for a full grown adult. I'm not going to feed it all the time because I know the downsides of feeding, pinkies to reptiles. But my breeding females, let's do it, right? And then I talked
Hmm.
to one guy, and in the interview, they're like, nah, there's no bones, there's no calcium, I'm like, okay, yeah, so I'm going to stop feeding, pinkies to my females. Then I get to another breeder who I respect, just as much. And they're like, no, we do it all the time, and not only that, we feed fuzzies, and they totally take down fuzzies. And I'm like, oh, that would be
Oh.
awesome. That solves my problem, right? Because they got
Right.
bones now. And I tried it out, and it works.
Yeah.
I've got a girl that just devours them, and I'm like,
Mm.
well, there's no issue whatsoever there. Most of my geckos won't take either. It's not
Yeah.
something they just go after.
I tried it a
But
few years back, and I had like a couple that were all about it, and others were like, I'm not touching that.
nope, 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 not eating the broccoli. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with roaches and other things that aren't moving like crickets.
Right.
For the most part, it's some of them are just really aggressive, and some aren't with eating.
Yeah.
So they're all different personalities.
I know. It is so true. If you ask like 10 different gecko breeders the same question, you'll get 10 different answers. Like at least,
Hmm.
maybe even more.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that it hasn't gotten to the point where it's, you know, just as an example, the leopard gecko debate that's been going on, for the last month now. And I don't want to get into the debate here, but people get religious about this kind of stuff, where it's like, no, this is the way, the only way. And you can cohab, you can't cohab. And again, I'm not getting into that debate,
Right.
but I'm glad that from what I've seen so far, I haven't seen that yet in the gargoyle community where what we're doing, it's like, well, I'm not going to work with them anymore because they, have a trio versus, rotating the male. I haven't seen that yet.
No. Yeah, I think it's like a little bit of a smaller community. I was talking to someone and it seems like we don't have as many like rules. I think we still have like standards of care that,
Oh, yeah.
you know, we want what's best for our gecko, but there doesn't seem to be as many like you said, you have to do it this way and it's the only way. I think people are a little bit more creative. They're trying things out for themselves. And they don't have to be scared to do that because we aren't quite as rigid.
Yep. Hopefully it stays that way. You never know.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
trying to be positive.
Right. Yeah, and like sometimes I hop on the Facebook group and it is interesting to see. I mean, things change like we were talking about, but the standards of care I think have changed in the 10 years that I've been doing it. And sometimes I hop on there and some of the things people are saying, like I'm like, "Oh, I've never heard that before." But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you probably, you are more of an expert than 99% of the people out there with these gargoyle geckos, okay? I would say most people don't have 10 years of experience, right? There are a few that have way more than you, right? But for the
Yeah.
most part, the people on Facebook have had them for a year, okay?
Yeah.
And
The people who have a lot of
so
experience
you
usually
can either
aren't
go,
on
yeah, okay, or
Facebook.
no. No,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. And could you imagine if we were on TikTok, how little experience people
No.
would have?
No, I'm not diving into
We're
those
not
waters anytime
TikTokers.
soon.
No, 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 no. That's fair. So that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, you can look at what they say and maybe implement it if it sounds good. I've had a lot of people reach out about, our last episode when I mentioned for the first time the calcium licks, right? Where I just put a little bowl of calcium out there and they're like,
Yeah.
we've done that now,
Yeah.
and that's just an idea that I kind of, stole from leopard geckos. And
It's nice to
so
have experience with other species and to take things that worked for them that might work for these ones. I think it helps you be a better, well-rounded keeper.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool, even just like, I've had people talk to me about, misting versus fogging versus, having an open air environment versus a glass tank for them. And again, I think that it has to do with where you live, but just that they're, looking at chameleons and saying, okay, well, we thought chameleons were one way, now they're another way. And, now we're implementing some of those theories into geckos as well. I think that's really creative.
Yeah. What's been your favorite part so far breeding the geckos? What surprised you? What gets you most excited?
The babies.
Of
The
course.
babies. Oh, there's nothing like, it's like opening up a new package on Christmas, right? Everyone is unique. You never know what's going to come out, you never want to like look at the gecko and have the disappointed face, right? But there's some that, like, I was expecting better. But for the most part, they're all gorgeous, and even the ones that don't come out glowing, sometimes I'll check on them 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. And it's like, where did you come from?
Right. They
Right?
really they change a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I've got a lot. One of my most consistent pairs was Raffles and Kalik. And I've got two of their babies right now that looked like most of their siblings, right? It was like, man, these guys are consistent, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, man, you're actually looking better than most of your siblings, right?
Yeah.
And just this clutch, whatever it is, they just got a little extra genetic juice, and it's just cool
Sure.
to watch that. So I would say that's one of the things that really keeps me going. egg hunting is always a fun thing for me. I couldn't imagine in some of the massive collections how tedious that could be. But for me, I pretty much know when the girls are going to start laying because they start doing the same habits. Now that I've been doing this for a little bit, you pick up on the cues. They're eating a little bit less. They start to dig. Especially with me, I've got all their substrate kind of mounted up into one corner for the most part. And so they don't usually go over there because I don't keep a ton of cork bark and things. It's an open area. And when they start just like even staying over on that part and they're up on the glass, I'm like, you're about to dig, aren't you? So that and plus tracking their cycle. I do that as well. I think that was a
Yeah.
great piece of advice I picked up is I think Red Rack in his video before I even started talking to people mentioned that just track it and you'll notice there's a trend. They are very consistent animals.
What do you use? Do you have a system to write everything down?
Good old Excel.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm old school like that. I just
I
have an
write
Excel
mine down,
spreadsheet.
so I'm even more old school.
Yeah, there you go. I do throw it up onto the cloud so that if I'm somewhere else and I want to check it out or check it out on my phone because I tinker with things all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just have I still keep track of all my geckos' weight throughout the months. I'm not consistent where I'm like on the first of every month I'm going to weigh you, right? But sometimes there's 2 months in between, sometimes there's 3 weeks in between. But I track all of that on the spreadsheet with their lineage, or not really lineage, but like just where they come from, their hatch date, and then with the eggs, I keep track of obviously when those were laid. I put an anticipated hatch date on there based on just past data that I have. How many days did it take to lay? And I keep all that information.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful to keep track like that and keep records. You learn a lot through that. And yeah, it helps you. I have my note cards just right there on the cages so I can see like,
Nice.
okay, all the ones that laid like early to mid February, I'm looking for eggs right now. They're a little bit slower in the beginning of the season. And then I find like the time in between clutches shortens a little bit, then lengthens, and
Hmm.
then they're done.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And just like between my first clutch and second clutch this year, it was around 60 days.
Yeah.
And then my last clutch came at 50 days. Cool. All right. 10 days early. And that's usually what it was last year. It was
Yeah.
around 45, 50 days,
Yeah.
which is a great pace for me because I don't want to be overrun with babies.
No, I like Gargs because they don't overwhelm you with babies, but they, unless they're a first time breeder. I have a few that only give a few every year, but most, like, they have a good amount of offspring. Not too much,
Yeah.
not too little. It's the perfect amount.
And that's part of why I wanted to get into gargoyles versus some of the other new cal species, especially the crested geckos. Again, not bashing crested geckos; they're fantastic. And if you want babies galore, pick you up some crested geckos, okay? But I was talking to some people when I was first starting. They're like, if you like the way the gargs look, they're going to retain their value just a little bit more. They're going to be just a little bit better of if you're looking at it as an investment. Because they're not as consistent. And I like that aspect of them. But then again, they're not as hard for me, as lychees are, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't want my gargs killing each other potentially if they get in the wrong battle or whatever it is. So, because, God, that would be heartbreaking. If anybody's experienced that, I'm sorry. You know?
That, yeah. Yeah. No, I haven't had anything like that happen. Yeah, which I'm happy about. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be heartbreaking. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, because we name these animals, a lot of us, and they're
You
our little
grow them up from
babies.
babies. You're so excited. You see a whole future with them.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. I already got them planned out. You saw that.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. But I am excited to, once I have my pairs going, looking to really hold back stuff because I haven't really held back very much. I've got one gecko I thought I was going to hold back from last year. Um, oh, my dogs are going nuts. I apologize.
Okay.
So, but yeah, again, I want that male, so it's up for sale.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Are you gonna stick with Gargs? What else do you keep any other species? Are you interested in any other species? Are you set for now? I know right now you're
Absolutely.
working towards that male, so
So, if it was up to my wife, I would just stick with Gargs, because I think, as I start to branch out, I get a little bit crazy.
I have
There's
to
so many
ask
other
real quick,
species.
like, has she come
Yeah,
around to them at all? Did she like the bearded dragon? Does she?
tolerates very
Okay.
well, and I think she likes that I like them. That's the thing, that she's
Yeah.
fantastic. She wants to make me happy, and you know, as long as I'm not blowing money, and like, I don't spend any of my paycheck on this hobby at all. Zero. I am not allowed to. So I act, unfortunately, a lot poorer than I am, but that's okay. It keeps me in check. It keeps me, married. I'm just not allowed to bring in snakes. That is an instant divorce. I've said that many times on the podcast. It is just, I don't even need to get a divorce lawyer. Just bring home, a snake.
Gosh.
So,
My husband hasn't threatened divorce, but he has said,
yeah.
yeah, no snakes. That is a firm rule as well.
Yeah. But for some reason, and one species I really am interested in, just because I've seen them recently with Johnny's collection, is I like skinks. The northern
Okay.
skinks are cool, but he's got some blotch skinks that I just think are amazing. Um, and he's kind of told me about their personalities and things like that. I wouldn't mind eventually doing something like that. Whether it's just a pet again or a breeding pair. I know they're pretty pricey, but I always like the rare, fancy things. If everybody has it, I'm less inclined to get it. So,
Sure.
but yeah, that collared lizards. I had collared lizards for a hot second.
Okay.
Sold them to invest in the gargoyles. I had them actually in a really cool custom built 6 foot by 3 foot by 2 foot enclosure. That
Wow.
thing, I watched Serpa Design. It did the whole
He's one of
foam
my favorite
background.
channels. Yeah.
Oh,
So cool.
I would love to meet him one day. That's a goal in 5 years. I mean, he
Yeah.
just. Sometimes I look at. I think he makes things harder than they have to be too. Sometimes just to prove that he's just that awesome, you know.
Yeah.
But everything he makes is gorgeous. I
Yeah.
want
He
his
is a
his
really,
basement.
really unique eye for building things.
Yeah, it's artistic for sure.
Hmm.
But I was really impressed with what I did on my first round there.
That's
So
so
pat
cool. You'll
myself
have
on the
to
back
post a
there.
picture or something if you have
I'll
one.
post it right here. I definitely do. Yeah, and so I had three at a trio of collared lizards for a hot minute while I was breeding roaches. I'm like, all right, cool, we'll do this, the UVB and everything. And they were great pets. They're a lot more handleable. I like them better almost than bearded dragons because they're like mini bearded dragons.
Sure.
They do take a little bit more patience just to hand tame down. But if you get them as babies and you know anything about how to handle reptiles and just walking them and not being a hawk and picking them up that way, they're really awesome creatures, and they will chill out where I could bring them out of their enclosure and watching them hunt. They're like little mini velociraptors. It's so
Aw,
cool,
that
and
is
the
cool.
colors are phenomenal. Yeah, but going into the new cal species, I mean, you have to eventually branch out, right? I think that's just a rule in this hobby that you have to get another species. You can't just stick to one. Is that in the code?
I don't know. Some people are like very strict with what they keep and they don't branch at all, but I think it's so much fun trying new things.
Yeah,
So,
I definitely
whatever
want to get
floats
some
your
of your
boat.
chewies.
Yeah.
I love some of the dark chewies you have.
Yeah.
So eventually, when I sell enough gargoyles and I can make you a reasonable offer and pay asking price, then absolutely I'll do the chewies. But I want to be very intentional. I don't want to just.
Hmm.
I had a pair that I got in a trade, and it just I loved them. I just want to make sure that it's the pair that I want to keep,
Hmm.
because I want to give like I said with the gargoyles, I want to do the 2x2 enclosures. The chewies, I really want to make sure as well to give them more where they're almost like a pet, but that they also breed. The other ones I just picked up, I picked up a trade, just a baby Eurodactyloides. I'm going to butcher the scientific name, the Occidentalis. I don't know how, the EOs, the really
Yeah.
small ones.
Okay.
So I got a confirmed female, and I'm really excited to eventually pick up a male. I almost might just keep them as pets, because when I bred when I first started, I got my first gargoyle gecko, and then I got a breeding pair of Urodactyloides agricola, and they bred
Okay.
for me really well. Like they were a proven pair. I got them as a proven pair for $400, and their babies were just amazing. But they were kind of a pain in the butt to me because again, their value is only about $100. After nobody wants to ship an animal that's $80 shipping for
Sure.
$100, and then they just took forever to grow if I just put them on Pangea. They would
Hmm.
grow like that if I put them on the fruit flies, right? The wingless fruit flies. But I hate fruit flies,
Yeah.
because they just, God forbid, they mix with anything that can fly.
If you do breed them, you should check out bean beetles. You can get them from Josh's Frogs.
Ooh.
They don't fly. Well, they can fly, but they're not like fruit flies. And my
Okay.
basement gets so warm, even the flightless ones like start flying or grow wings or whatever. But they do
Yeah.
like the bean beetles too. So
Nice.
it's a
Okay.
little bit
Well,
easier to culture too.
okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, because, oh man, when those things go bad, they stink. The fruit
Yeah.
fly culture.
And you
So,
gotta like boil their food and everything. The bean beetles, you just add more beans to them.
beans.
They're awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, sounds right up my alley. See, there's something I learned to take away. I love this. It's great. Bean beetles. Okay, everybody go look up bean beetles and feed them to your agricolae and your
Yeah.
dactyloides. Yeah, so that's another species. Is it the Stropherus, the Australian
Hmm.
species that are very
Yeah.
similar to them? There's a few of those I'd love to have.
They're really
I
cool
like
too.
everything.
I had a few pairs of those. I just sold them last year. But
Oh,
they were
very
really
cool.
cool.
One species too, and I know I've got a lot of them that I want, but once I'm ready to get back into feeding bugs on a really consistent basis, I some of the leaf tail geckos are just blowing up. I mean, some of the colors that I'm seeing and just I don't know, they just look so cool. So
Yeah.
different species. I don't know which
Yeah.
one I want yet, but that's another
Right.
one.
They're all cool. They're all so unique. So it's tough. You want one of all of them.
Right. So I'll limit myself right now, but eventually, so in hopefully 5 years, I just have my entire basement redone, and it's a zoo. I'll charge admissions,
Yeah.
and we'll be good to go.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on again. And this time I get to ask you, or I got to ask you some questions. I had a lot of fun. Anything else you want to chat about before we head out?
Oh, I appreciate your time and thank you for agreeing to be my host.
Yeah.
You're one of my favorite people that I got to interview in the past, and
Thank
the
you.
fans love you. So I had to
Oh,
have you back on, and I'll
thanks.
definitely have you back on again. But no, I honestly I just thought it'd be kind of fun to switch things up, and I've had a blast just actually talking about me is not the hardest thing for me.
Well, yeah, like I said, I've watched a lot of your, pretty much almost all of them, and I know like a little bit of your past, a little like some of these tidbits I knew before, but I've learned a lot
Yeah,
about you. It's fun to hear your story.
well, I
So
appreciate
thanks.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and as far as obviously everybody can reach out to me anytime on this YouTube channel. If you are watching this and you haven't subscribed, because you hear YouTubers say this, but you look at the analytics and it's a real thing. I can see that a lot of people watch, and only a percentage of you guys are subscribed.
Does it
Please do
cost you
that.
anything
Share
to
this with
hit
people.
subscribe?
Nope, nope, not at all. I'll just bug you once a week with a new video so I don't spam people. Also, you can find me obviously on North Market, YouTube, or yeah, I already said YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I answer Instagram more than anything. I've now become an Instagram person. Before this, I was never an Instagram person. So
Okay.
I was definitely a Facebook guy.
Yeah.
But that has changed. But yeah, other than that, I'm just excited to continue this. I appreciate all the support, and thank you so much for interviewing me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again. And happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I do want to say one last thing, just because I want this to go into the halls of history. Speaking of animals, my dog Beckett is turning 14 tomorrow with me, so we
Wow.
actually have the same birthday. And I'm not making that up. It's not like he was adopted, where we're just like, oh, I'll write it in. No, his birth certificate says, the paperwork from AKC says that he was born on April 15th. And he's been there with me throughout my entire, really adult life. He's not doing too well right now, so we might not make it to 15. But if everybody could pray for him right now, that would be amazing.
Will do.
Thank
Happy
you so
birthday,
much.
Beckett.
Yeah, happy birthday, Beckett. I'll post a picture of him right here. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time on the Gecko Cove Connection.
See you later.
Bye.
Hey, if you've enjoyed this video and want to encourage me to make more Gargo of Gecko content, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, share this with a friend, and maybe check out one of the videos right over there. I'll see you next time on Gecko Cove.